So now that we have access, it's time to plant some malware potentially, depending again, really carefully on the scope of what we're supposed to be doing within this ethical hack. Planting malware, certainly some types of malware are just thrown out into the wild and they prey on either users with a basic understanding of computer security or no understanding, but they can be fairly random as far as their impact goes. Without some type of leverage, it's really kind of a hit or miss as to whether any kind of malware attack is going to work. So having this leverage that we've already got helps us conduct a very specific, precise, and effective malware attack. The example here is pretty clear. If you email an executable to a bunch of users that you want to have run some malware, well, depending on where that malware comes from or that email comes from, they may run it, they may not run it. So if there's an authoritative internal source that the email comes from, like, for example, a network administrator or an executive, users are almost certainly going to double-click it no matter what it is or what warnings come up. A trusted internal source may be an internal IT staffer that's not so well known or an individual manager. Users probably will run it, but possibly not. And then an unknown external source, that same email that comes from some random free mail address or some random unknown, unrecognized address. Most users tend to be well enough educated on security and on process to not run it at all. Some probably will, but most will not, especially if there are flags and warnings that go off when they double-click an attachment. So using the compromise to send that email means that the email can come from an authoritative internal source or a trusted internal source and have a higher likelihood of actually impacting the system and getting the compromise that we're looking for, planting that malware in an effective, efficient way without having to send it 100 times, without having to set off all kinds of other flags. Also consider, speaking of flags, if you can send that executable one time to 1 or 2 or 3 users and know that you've got a very high success rate, that will actually prevent you from having to spam, prevent you from having to send it over and over and over again to a bunch of different users. And that's the kind of stuff that's going to set off flags. The scalpel-based approach is the one that's going to work the best.